Today on the newscast, is the U.S. about to send sailors and Marines to the Persian Gulf to protect commercial shipping from Iranian piracy? And could conflict be on the horizon? Get all the breaking details next. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. We've been telling you over the past few weeks about the increase in Iranian piracy in the Persian Gulf region. Now, the United States, as we detailed on the newscast about a week ago, is taking pretty serious steps to deter Iran from seizing commercial vessels in the Persian Gulf region, in particular in the strategic Strait of Hormuz, where some 20% of the world's crude oil passes through each and every day. Now, the U.S. announced about a week or two ago that it is sending F-16 fighter jets, F-35 fighter jets, at least 3 warships, and up to 2,500 U.S. Marines to the Middle East, all as a message to the Iranian regime, and again, to deter Iranian piracy. But now there is apparently a proposal on the table that U.S. officials are considering that would be really unprecedented, folks, in that U.S. Marines and Navy sailors would actually board commercial vessels at the request of those vessels to protect them from Iranian pirates. We've got all the breaking details for you. Again, this would be a pretty unprecedented move by the United States, and deploying Marines and sailors, if I'm not mistaken, in a way they have not been previously used. But we'll break it down in a minute. Before I do, real quick reminder to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Hey, as you can see today, we're digging deep into the kind of stories that are just being pretty much bypassed by the mainstream media. Surprise, surprise. But these are stories, and everything unfolding in the Middle East right now, the world's most chaotic and strategic region. These are stories and events that will profoundly affect all of us, no matter where we live. That's why we do what we do right here on the Watchman Newscast, not only digging deep into all things Israel and the Middle East, but China, Russia, the Great Reset Plan, what's going on here in the U.S. and beyond. So keep it right here every day. Subscribe so you don't miss a single upload. Okay, let's get into it. Again, pretty unprecedented that U.S. Marines and sailors would essentially board commercial vessels. And folks, these aren't exclusively U.S. vessels. These are vessels flagged from any country around the world. At the request of those vessels or those nations or those companies, U.S. Marines and sailors would actually board those vessels and basically act as security as they pass through the waters of the Persian Gulf, in particular the Strait of Hormuz. Now, again, I don't know that U.S. sailors or Marines have been used in this capacity in the past. It's pretty unique, to say the least, but this is all meant, again, to deter the Iranian regime. As we've detailed for you here in the newscast, this has really increased since 2019 or thereabouts, in particular, folks, where Iran, in particular Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, basically uses a swarm of speedboats, and they're armed, these speedboats, to quickly surround commercial vessels, oil tankers, and the like, surround them, board them, and seize them literally at gunpoint. They've used this swarm tactic again and again with these large speedboats. Now, some 3 commercial vessels seized since April of this year alone. As I said, in the past 4 years in particular, Iran has really ramped up this activity. And at times, as we've detailed for you here in the newscast, it has brought them into direct confrontation with the U.S. Navy. Now, there hasn't been any kind of shooting incident between the two sides, but certainly warning shots fired by U.S. vessels and U.S. destroyers to chase away these Islamic Revolutionary Guards speedboats. But clearly Iran, provocation after provocation against the United States, and feeling very emboldened, to say the least, on the high seas, especially in their backyard in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz. Many, many times the Iranian regime has threatened to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. So the U.S. taking a pretty drastic step here, again, Up to 2,500 Marines are deploying to the Middle East, of course, with the fighter jets, destroyers, and the rest. That's a big step in and of itself. But to have now Marines and sailors potentially, no final decision has been made, but potentially aboard commercial vessels in really an unprecedented role as security for vessels that may not hail from the United States. This is another level. And you wonder, folks, if it's necessary. And I say that clearly there's a need to protect shipping. That's not what I'm saying. But I wonder if the Biden administration would have simply earlier shown force, and it doesn't have to be physical shooting force, but shown that they mean business to the Iranian regime. Right now, this looks like a show of force. U.S. forces increasing in the region. By the way, what do you think of all this? Would love to get your thoughts and comments on it. Is this a wise move? Nonetheless, now the Biden administration saying, hey, we're serious about security in the Middle East and deterring the Iranian threat. But that's the key word there, folks, deterring. Now, it's, to me, a schizophrenic, bipolar policy by this administration in Washington. And I say that for a few reasons. Number one, at the same time, the Biden administration is taking these steps to send a message to the Iranian regime in the region. By the same token, the Biden administration has been tripping over itself over the past 2.5 years to try to come to a new nuclear agreement with the Iranian regime. Now, that first version of the Iranian nuclear deal was an absolute disaster. Joe Biden was vice president when that deal was cut in 2015 under then President Obama. Of course, Trump pulled the U.S. out of it in 2018. And now the Biden administration has been desperate to re-enter that deal. So that shows weakness to Iran. It's clearly a form of appeasement where the Biden administration says to the mullahs in Tehran, look, we'll give you whatever we want or whatever you want. And yes, we will gift wrap billions of dollars in sanctions relief to you. Just don't attack us. And please just slow down on the nuclear development and enriching all of that uranium. Clearly an appeasement strategy. And Iran has been using a sort of extortion blackmail strategy. Again, seizing ships on the high seas, attacking U.S. troops, U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq. Over 80 attacks since Joe Biden took office in January 2021, and Biden has responded to exactly 3 of those 80 attacks. Again, doesn't exactly send a message of strength to the Iranian regime, whether it's taking lump after lump in Syria and Iraq, desperately approaching the Iranian regime and trying to revive nuclear talks, and knowing, and the Biden administration has acknowledged this, knowing that the Iranian regime has plotted to assassinate former Trump administration officials and U.S. military officials on U.S. soil. The Biden administration is well aware of that. And then there's the not-so-small matter of Iran cracking the skulls of protesters, its own people in the streets of Iran over the past year, and really been happening for years. Torture, imprisonment, murder, persecuting Christians as well. All of that said, still the Biden administration has been hat in hand going to the Iranian regime and pleading, it seems, for a new nuclear deal, which brings me to our final point here. The Iranian regime sees all of these U.S. forces suddenly coming to the region in a show of force. Does the Iranian regime, although they're clearly not happy about it, to have the great Satan, as they call the United States, in greater numbers in their own backyard, does the Iranian regime at the end of the day think this is all just a big bluff? That there's no teeth behind it, that it's just a bluff by the Biden administration, and that when the rubber hits the road, at the end of the day, the Biden administration will not take any sort of action? Yes, it's a show of force, but does Iran believe there's real force and intent to use force if needed behind these moves? Again, folks, I think this could have been avoided if the Biden administration would have been very businesslike and direct up front with the Iranian regime and saying, hey, this will not stand. I think back to 2020 when President Trump eliminated Qasem Soleimani, the terror master from Iran. That was the message of all messages to the Iranian regime. Joe Biden, by the way, criticized that move, as did members of his administration. So again, a schizophrenic, bipolar policy by this administration. I'm not sure that they even know what they're doing, but this is a major commitment, potentially by the United States, an unprecedented one, to board commercial vessels and act as security for them. Not a role that the Navy and Marines have traditionally played. What do you think? I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Is it all a big bluff by the Biden administration? How does Iran view this? And could there be conflict on the high seas? Could one false move lead to a conflict between the two sides? Very interesting development here, folks. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.